have this little dinky holder for some of my Forstner bits and router bits. But really the majority of them just always lay on top of my drill press stand. So today, I'm gonna make something for them. Yeah. I went through my scraps and found some eligible pieces to use. Oop, that's oak, not that one. Two of the boards were already cut at a 45-degree angle, so I started playing around with the design that would allow the router bits to be tilted away from the wall at an angle, and I decided to use a French cleat to hold them on the wall. I started by making the board for my router bits first, and for the larger bits, I would set them in place, make sure they're not touching, and then mark the location. For the smaller ones, I used a ruler to space them apart evenly. Then I would take my board over the drill press and drill the holes, changing up the bit for the two different shank sizes. So when I changed drill bits, I would lower the bit so it would only go through about 3/4 of the board depth. I would adjust the deck and then continue drilling the holes. Now this is very easy to recreate if I ever get more router bits, but if you're making one, then you could also drill a whole bunch of extra holes so that as your collection grows, you already have room to store them. With the board made, now I started making the cleats, both for the back of the holder and also for the wall. Both of the cleats are matched up to the exact length of the holder itself. I attached the cleat to the back of the holder using glue, then I also came back with a countersink and screws just because I didn't want to have to mess with clamps. And I repeated this process for the other things that I wanted to store. The Forstner bit set was really easy to do. I simply laid them in place to figure out the spacing. Then I would hold them upright and press it down into the wood to where the center point of the Forstner bit would make an indent on the wood. This made it very simple when I moved to the drill press because I'd only need the bit to be in the rough vicinity of that imprint and then it would walk itself into the center of it. The deep plug cutter set that I have already came arranged, spaced nicely in the box. So I simply used a ruler to take the exact measurements that they were placed and transferred them to my board. While the holders were drying, I moved to adding the cleats to the wall. Now I didn't choose a French cleat because I think I want to take an entire set of bits with me around the shop, but rather, if I ever move my drill press stand, it'll be very easy to remove these cleats and then relocate them to wherever I move my drill press. So this does work, however, I don't think that I don't like how unsteady it is sitting on the cleat, even though it has this 45. I could thicken up the material so that the 45 would give it more surface area to grab onto, or I could just change the angle again to increase the surface area. But I think I actually just want to try to change the design slightly. So that's what I'm going to do. I ran the entire holder, after removing the screws, through my table saw to remove the cleat. Then I also grabbed some 1/4-inch plywood and cut some strips. Then I put it all back together using the same method, except now adding the sheet of plywood in between the cleat and the holder. So what this will do is give me two surface areas to grab the cleat that's on the wall. The 45 that's mated to the cleat, and then the plywood that runs all along the front of it. And just this small modification drastically changes the stability of these holders, to where now whenever I'm inserting or removing the plugs, it's not wanting to slowly walk off the cleat, to where I have to reposition it and set it back on the cleat. Something else I did was open up all the holes just a tad bit more, just enough to where it was not a snug fit. And now this gives me a system that makes all of my bits very accessible and visible. Yeah, that's gonna work a lot better. I really wish that I had the type of mind to be able to foresee a lot more problems, but unfortunately I have to work with the way my mind is wired, and trial and error is still my #1 teaching resource whenever it comes to building. And the only reason I tell you that is because if your mind works the same way, then I don't want you to be discouraged if you try something and it doesn't work out. I feel like regardless of how many jukes you have to do in order to get to the end product, if you get there, then that's a win. So anyways, I hope that this is helpful to somebody. I think it's going to be quite useful in my shop. And that's it. So I'll see you next time.